Hello friends, for today's video we're going to be doing another light novel and manga reading vlog, and for the light novel, of course, I'm continuing on with my read through of the Apothecary Diaries light novels. So for today we're going to be discussing the second one within that series. I will note something about Apothecary Diaries in just a moment, but for the manga, I have so many things that I need to get around to, and there's so many, not just anime that I want to watch, but also more manga that I want to read. But I couldn't resist. After getting the first few volumes of Demons of the Shadow Realm, I just so badly want to jump into it. So I figured might as well just go for it. And if you don't know, this is by the same creator who made Fullmetal Alchemist. I just have come off of my rewatch of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, which I had the best time with. I had so much fun, did really in-depth discussions with one of my friends who it was the first time he's ever checked out Fullmetal Alchemist, so that was a blast because this for me was a return to something I love and a first watch for him, and it just made for the best of conversations, I thought. But I just miss I already kind of just want to watch Fullmetal again, and I'm like, no, I gotta move on from that, don't do that. So even though I am deviating from some of my reading plans to make time for this, I'm like, that's better than just rewatching Fullmetal again or just wanting to read through the manga again. This feels like the next best option, or maybe I'm just kidding myself. But regardless, I don't know basically anything about this series, and I know there's been an anime announcement, and I have not watched the trailer for that because I don't want to know anything just yet. I want to have true first impressions for this, so I'm going to be reading through the first 3 volumes. And then, of course, giving you my thoughts as I progress through these. As for the thing that I wanted to note about the Apothecary Diaries light novels, many of you know I'm doing a read-along for this, and our first live show is going to cover the first 4 light novels, which is what coordinates with what's out of the anime. And that's going to take place on August 16th, but I wanted to clear up the amount that I will likely be discussing in vlogs versus what's going to be discussed in the live show. Because I have a tendency to film things so far in advance, by the time something is actually uploaded on YouTube, chances are I'm pretty far ahead of where I was when the upload occurs. And so likely what's going to happen is that there was a vlog that went up where I talked about, within that vlog, the first light novel. And then for today, we're going to talk about the second light novel. The live show is going to occur on August 16th, and then moving forward after that, the next vlogs are likely going to contain the third light novel and the fourth light novel, and then of course within all of that is when there's a discussion for all 4. So it's almost like my individual thoughts are going to be sandwiching the group discussion. And obviously, if you don't want extreme spoilers, then these manga vlogs can serve as an opportunity to hear some of my thoughts without having things really dived into too deep. If you are looking for more of the in-depth discussion, that's what the live show will provide. But I wanted to make clear, because of the fact that vlogs are going to be recorded so far in advance, and then the live show, of course, is live, that's why it's going to be talking about 4 of them, but then in the next vlog after that, it'll probably be the 3rd one, and then the 4th one. I don't think anybody cares that much, but I just wanted to clear up why it's going to potentially be structured that way. Regardless, though, we're going to be talking about the second light novel today, and then, of course, we're going to be jumping into this series. And as for the vlog portion of things, typically you get clips of Luna Bear, my dog, but I'm going to be dog sitting for my mom. And thus, rather than it being Luna Bear, who you're going to see clips of, you're going to be seeing my little buddy, Dutton, who is a very, very sweet and derpy lab. He's a cutie. He loves to play, and he definitely has more dog energy than my dog. My dog kind of is a cat in a dog's body, and Dutton is a dog in a dog's body. So we're going to hang out with him, read through some manga and light novels.
Hi, bud. What's up? Oh, dinosaur yawn. Oh, hi, buddy. Oh, that's my pillow. Guess it's fine though. Here, you're gonna bonk your head. Oh, ear scratches are the best. Yay. Who doesn't like ear scratches? Is that your pillow now? Well, you slobbered on it, so. Stretch. Oh boy.
Having read through the first 3 volumes of Demons of the Shadow Realm, or Daemons, I'm still not sure. If you know for a fact, you can correct me. Now that I've read through these, I do not fear spoilers, so I will be looking into that to make sure I don't keep saying it incorrectly if I am saying it incorrectly. But in the meantime, I'm going to say Demons of the Shadow Realm and state that having read the first 3 volumes, I am so glad that I didn't look into this beforehand whatsoever, and I'm going to try to describe it in a way where the reasons why I was glad I didn't look into it ahead of time will still hold true for you if you do choose to hear what I have to say about this. Regardless though, I think that the setup of this is very unique, and that's not surprising because while there are occasional components of, for example, Fullmetal Alchemist, since it's the same creator, there's the occasional moment that feels similar to things here and there. At the end of the day, I think Fullmetal is one of the most unique stories that I've ever consumed, and simultaneously has some of the best, most impactfully executed themes. And thus far in this one, of course, only 3 volumes in, I haven't necessarily gotten the exceptionally well done themes just yet. Hopefully we will, but we're only 3 volumes in. It's kind of hard to do in 3 volumes. Where it's a lot of setup though. The concepts, that's the parallel I'm making here. The concepts are so unique and so fun, but have tiny glimpses of things we've seen before. As an example, if you've ever read the Bartimaeus trilogy, it's almost kind of like if you mixed that and you combined it with X-Men, which was a blast for those first 3 volumes. And it's one of those things, or maybe even Pokemon to some degree, just because there are basically beings that have powers and they assist humans. And the way that they do so, it invites you to be curious about what other possibilities they are. And they come in pairs. Thus far, they seem to always be coming in pairs. I'll be curious to see if there are times where that changes. But they come in pairs, these beings that assist humans. And they are supposed to do the bidding of their masters, but there are already sprinkles here and there of the potential of what happens when there's animosity between them and their masters, or what happens when maybe a master is really kind. Are they more likely to try and interpret the commands in a favorable way? Or would there be instances where they're so far gone that they would try to get around commands given to them? This is why I was making the comparison to Bartimaeus. If you've read that, then you'll know why there's that parallel there. And if not, if you don't know anything about the Bartimaeus trilogy, it is technically a young adult, sometimes considered middle grade. It's a lot of fun, and I still highly recommend it. But the idea is that this young boy summons this demon, basically, to do his bidding. It's a djinn. He summons this djinn to do his bidding, and because he's so young and inexperienced, and the djinn that he has summoned is so powerful, the djinn is constantly trying to work around the commands given so it can break free, but also simultaneously it's finding itself, 1, it has to obey the commands given to it, and 2, it kind of is starting to maybe like the child who has summoned it. And then over the course of the trilogy, the child grows older, and you're seeing the ways that he devolves sometimes, and the way that greed can kind of start to get to him, and the way that the demon initially respected him and now doesn't really respect him anymore. I keep calling it a demon. In the Bartimaeus trilogy, they're called djinn. But it's a similar setup in that sense. Regardless, though, the reason I was kind of tying it to Pokemon is because in Pokemon, of all things to compare this to, maybe people think this is a silly comparison, but in Pokemon, there's kind of this fun of what's the next design going to be for whatever the Pokemon is, and what are its powers going to be, and what are the different kinds, what are they going to look like, and what are they going to be able to do with their powers. It's not just a matter of having powers, but also what kinds of extra things that you wouldn't even think of are they going to be able to do, and how do they pair with their masters, or however you want to categorize it. And in that sense, it reminds me of this. But then also just the powers that can come into the picture is where I'm kind of drawing the X-Men comparison. Anyway, they typically come in pairs. The pairs are offsetting each other to some degree. So, for example, you might have something that's like night and day. There's always going to be this coupling of opposites in a sense. And so it's almost like, what are the amount of times that the opposites can be portrayed? So even though there is a level of extreme creativity to all of this, there's also this limitation that Arakawa has placed on herself. And it's really fun to see how she can find things that fit within this still. So for example, some of them are like a tortoise and a hare of all things, which was so fun. And they're so cute also. And then some of the designs are really weird and they look so much like some of her designs from Full Metal Alchemist at the same time. So you're like, there's that signature weirdness that I think a lot of us really love. The setting is not necessarily what I was expecting or anticipating. And on one hand, as somebody who loves fantasy, I am always excited when we get to explore really unique and interesting worlds. And I have found for myself especially over the last year, that I'm actually really drawn to when there are advancements in technology tied into fantasy. And I think that this story is doing that really well. I think Full Metal, I'm so sorry to make these comparisons to Full Metal because I'm sure everybody has a hard time if they've read Full Metal not immediately drawing comparisons. But I'm giving a compliment to both this and Full Metal for the fact that it has kind of shifted that thought of mine of like, oh, I like these unique, beautiful worlds. Because in Full Metal Alchemist, it was one of the first times I had experienced a fantasy world that is genuinely really unique and creative and different, but also employs steampunk elements. As an example, you have them navigating on trains all the time. You have them using certain kinds of weapons that are not necessarily often associated with the fantasy genre. And in this story, that is proving true, but even more so. I'm once again trying to avoid saying too much, but I was really surprised by that. And at the moment, I can't say either way whether I'm pleased with it or I'm not, because I haven't read enough to know, but I came to absolutely love the setting in Full Metal Alchemist, and I have a feeling that as it progresses, I'm going to really like the way that we have these integrations inside this series as well. Also, I find that the general idea of the setup of the two main characters, the way that they seem to be almost like these characters that are fulfilling certain prophecies, this concept in relation to history and the violence throughout history, especially specific wars, I am curious to see if there's going to be commentary on the fact that we have certain people at the forefront that we direct our anger toward, but there are individuals behind the scenes who are actually kind of manipulating things. You can already see that with our main characters in the very questions that they're asking about their role in things and the people that have been like them in the past and their role in things. So I'm very curious to see how we expand on that. And the characters thus far are very fun and likable, and the humor is fantastic. I laughed out loud a number of times throughout this, and it's so quirky. There's nothing quite like Arakawa's humor. One thing that I will say that I'm not with certainty calling this a criticism by any means, or am I saying it's a con, but I haven't felt necessarily any emotional gut punches just yet. And there have been a couple of times where I have found that during more serious things, there are still jokes. And I think typically Arakawa always delivers jokes at just the right times and then knows when to be really serious. And so far, I think that's mostly true in this, but there have been a couple times where we're kind of joking and we have sort of like quips or silly moments during something that seems kind of intense. And I trust that we're going to not have that be overdone necessarily, but I haven't felt any of those really emotionally devastating moments just yet, and it's only 3 volumes in, so I didn't expect it to, but just kind of giving those first impressions that I haven't had that moment, but I can see there being a lot of potential for it. There's certainly been times where I was like, aw, about certain things, but nothing that has hit me in a way where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the most tragic thing I've ever encountered. Nothing like that currently. The part about all this that I think I'm having the most fun with truly is just what's the next interesting demon pairing gonna be, and the sibling dynamics. I'm really excited about that. And then there's so much intrigue and mystery surrounding everything that I just kind of want more answers. I'm so glad I picked it up. Can't wait to check out more. I know there's going to be an anime. I let myself watch the trailer. They hardly gave us anything. And I'm excited, though, that it's basically nothing, because that allows for us to keep getting things as they come. I'm really excited. It's a lot of fun. Segueing now to Apothecary Diaries. At the beginning, I was noting I would probably be sticking to talking about the second of the light novels, but I'm actually partway through the third. So I'm going to talk about a concept that I feel has been shown over the course of this 1.5 volumes of the light novels. And then there's one specific thing I want to highlight. For this first portion, it's not going to be spoilery necessarily, and then the other thing I'll say, when I say it, I'll let you know that it's coming up so that you have a little opportunity to skip ahead if you would like. But the concept that I wanted to talk about is relating to the fact that in the first novel, you see Mao Mao consistently saying that Jinshi has too much time on his hands. And I think I even noted before that I thought that was funny. I think in last week's vlog, I was commenting on the fact that she keeps thinking this, and we know that that's not true. But now we're seeing a little bit of a shift, because obviously in the second, we see that she is around him more. Specifically, she's seeing his workload that he has. She's starting to be more exposed to that. She's seeing just how much effort he puts in to try and not only maintain this air of serenity, you could say, and his nymph-like beauty, the way that he's always trying to maintain this position, which I still don't think she loves that he puts on this front, but I think she's starting to recognize the reasons that he's putting on this front and the way that he's meant to try and sort of calm everybody down amidst all of the scheming that is transpiring throughout the rear palace. So she's seeing him almost, you could say, in action, or at least she's seeing pieces of him in action. Obviously, in relation to the things that she's pulled into, she does see him a little bit more involved in solving crimes and other such things. And I don't think it's this light switch moment where suddenly she thinks, wow, he's really, really hardworking, and I was completely wrong. She doesn't have moments like that. And that's part of why I love Apothecary Diaries, is because of the fact that you start to see slow shifts in how characters feel about things or feel about other people. And I think that's very true in just her observing him working. Because before, as noted, she would consistently think, this guy has too much time in his hands. And then she actually starts to have this, oh, he's actually quite busy. There are times where she literally notes that he's busy. And there are times where she is starting to see, specifically, there's something to do with mushrooms in one of the chapters. And she's seeing the way that she always thought that maybe he showed favoritism to Lady Gyokyo, for example. But then she's seeing the way that he has to navigate ensuring that no one consort feels like they are heavily prioritized or heavily neglected, that he truly tries to ensure everybody feels like he is the person they can come to for things. And that he will manage things in a way that honors people's privacy and that he respects them as individuals and that he hears what they have to say. And she has a moment of thinking like, oh, maybe he's actually handling this well. Maybe he's actually doing a good job. And I think that this shift is important because even though it doesn't seem like it's particularly... It's something to be that noteworthy, I do think if you analyze how she thinks of him in the first versus, in halfway through or whatever point, partially through the third volume, there has already been some transition in her feelings. And I think it's very much that Mao Mao respects individuals who work hard. And we know that she has a strong sense of justice. It's one of the first things that we see about her. And we're told about her. It's one of the only things that we're told directly. I mean, that's not true. We know that she doesn't like sweets, for example, but you know what I mean. We do often get the show don't tell displayed for us in this series. So we know she has a strong sense of justice, and I think she's starting to actually maybe have the tiniest bit of respect, the tiniest bit. And the tiniest bit of respect from Mao Mao means a lot. But still, the tiniest bit of respect is starting to develop to a point where I think it's why later on there's a part where Jinshi is kind of at his wit's end. He doesn't know what to do. It's having to do with some people that have come to visit and how they have kind of challenged him with a certain form of presenting something to them that they had heard about from their grandfather. And he doesn't know what to do because he thinks like, I don't think there is a solution to this problem. And Mao Mao, we know. It even tells us that Mao Mao, I think I noted this as well last week, that Mao Mao will sometimes not always work the hardest if she doesn't care that much, or she doesn't really pay that much attention if she doesn't care about what you're saying. But in this, she doesn't have to involve herself whatsoever, but she sees that Jinshi is trying really hard. She's been seeing how much she was kind of wrong, and he does consistently try really hard. And then I think in this moment, there's a part of her that, because she does end up being like, I'll see what I can do. And that's so the opposite of what she would have done at the beginning. So I think she's seeing like, oh, he's trying really hard, and I think maybe there's a chance that I can help, so I'm going to try to help with this. And that to me is sort of the beginning of there being at least some understanding between the two of them that is actually rooted in something true and accurate, because I think for a long time her idea of him is completely different than who he really is, understandably, because he is kind of putting on a front all the time. But her view is incorrect. And then, of course, he can't ever actually have a conversation with her, because in the sense that we would want, as far as opening up, making things clear how so-and-so feels, a lot of it is kind of miscommunication, but not in the way that we dislike. It's more of, given the setting, everything always comes down to the setting in a really wonderful way, because I think the setting is executed really well. But there's always a chaperone around, or they always kind of have to hint at something, but they can't say things directly. And Mao Mao, knowing her station, just be careful about how she words things. And then Jinshi, given his station, has to consider how he's wording things. And if there's other people around, he can't say something that's considered too forward. All of that, I think we recognize why they always seem to be talking around each other or over each other's heads, and they're not quite being able to meet each other. And this is one of those moments where they're starting to see the real person. We know that Jinshi values the fact that she treats him like a person, but we don't actually always have them seeing each other as they truly are. And I feel like this is the first step towards that. And actually the first step towards building a different kind of respect between the two of them. At least that's my assessment. And then the other thing I wanted to note, and I was just complimenting the setting, and I think that this is a perfect example of this. This is where this is very specific and somewhat spoilery, so if you don't want to hear this part, it has to do with the very end of the second light novel. So jumping into that, we know at the end of the second light novel, after everything has been revealed about Mao Mao's family, and they end up getting married. And Mao Mao had thought, I actually was kind of hoping that he would be with Mei Mei, because she would have a much better life, or at least she would have not necessarily a better life, but because the security for the women at the Verdigris house is not very strong once they reach a certain age. The idea for Mao Mao was that, okay, she thinks of this kind of as a sister. If my sister had been able to go with Lacan, then she would have had more of her life secure for her. I kind of wish it had been her instead. And that's a bizarre thought to have, given that, one, she doesn't even really like her dad that much. She thinks he's kind of creepy and weird. And then here's this woman that she thinks of essentially as a sister. So there's quite a big age difference between the two of them. She doesn't even like this man very much. And she likes this woman, but she would want them together for the security that it would provide the woman. And the reason I'm taking note of this, and the reason I'm tying it to the setting, is because so much of this story, we see that the way love actually rarely plays a part in any of the interactions between the characters. Romantic love, I should specify. Obviously, I think Mao Mao and her adoptive father have the cutest. I love their dynamic. And I think Gaoshin, perhaps in a fatherly way, maybe loved Jinshi. But anyway, when it comes to romantic love, sorry, I love Gaoshin. I had to get a little Gaoshin love in there. But anyway, the way that we see romantic feelings portrayed in this, it's actually most of the time absent from the relationships between characters, because it's all a matter of a sense of duty and a sense of security in life, a sense of comfort. And I think that is a product of the setting that we have established in this, that even Mao Mao, who we know is very pragmatic, and she's always thinking, if she even believes this, then there's almost this feeling of like, oh, there's no hope for anybody in this story. But it makes sense that she would think that. And from a modern lens, you'd be like, why would you want your sister to be with him in any capacity, even if nothing happened and it was just sort of like, just for appearances? Still, you'd be like, don't you want her to be able to find, you have that feeling. But you understand where Mao Mao is coming from. And I think it just showcases extremely well that even our protagonist, who is somebody that we adore and we root for, she is still somebody who is impacted by her environment, and her environment is very much somebody who grew up very poor. So it makes sense that she would have this view. It felt surprising for a second, but it absolutely makes sense upon reflection that she would feel this way. And it also, I think, informs us as to how she feels the way she feels oftentimes with other individuals. It's one of those moments that I just, once again, I think it's not saying a whole lot necessarily in a straightforward way, but there's so much that you can extract from this and appreciate, even though it feels like such a kind of throwaway, oh yeah, Mao Mao wished that this had happened instead. Anyway, those are my thoughts for currently about 1.5 volumes of Apothecary Diaries, specifically the second and a little bit into the third, and then also Demons of the Shadow Realm. This video is going to end up going up shortly before the live show discussion for the first 4 Apothecary Diaries light novels. So if you are interested in a spoiler discussion, I'll have information for that linked down below. We're probably also going to squeeze in one more sprint where we read together before the live show, so everybody feels like they have time to catch up and get ready for that discussion. I can't wait. We will go more in depth. I'm giving kind of overview thoughts on some of the aspects of this, but we'll go, I'm sure, super in depth for a really long time because none of us can shut up about the story. So if you're interested in that, as noted, I'll have information in the description bar. I'd love to know your thoughts on both Demons of the Shadow Realm and Apothecary Diaries. If you want to talk spoilers, of course, just feel free to do so, but write spoilers and then enter so nobody has anything ruined for them. Thanks so much for watching, though. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.